Hello everybody. If you've seen any of my videos before or have been on my channel before, you know that I am a big horror guy. Besides the occasional weird history video I might make, which are just so rare, I barely consider them as content on my channel, that is pretty well primarily what we talk about here is horror. And I absolutely adore being a horror content creator. It lets me talk about the things I love and allows me to engage with a lot of horror series that I likely wouldn't have if not for this channel, as thanks to recommendations from many of you guys, which I thank you for tremendously. I've mentioned it before on this channel, but whenever I find something that I think I could maybe make a video on, be it a series that looks entertaining or a story that sounds creepy, whatever it may be, if I haven't actually read it or seen it or whatever engagement I need to do with this media may be, I'll put it in a little notes app on my phone to come back to it later. And some of these honestly have been sitting in there for months, some for over a year. My bad. But recently there was one that I added onto the top of the list that I ended up going to pretty quickly, and I can say I'm glad I did. This was an analog horror series I heard being talked about online called Dog Nightmares. Now, I'll be honest, when I clicked on the series, I didn't think much. It looked promising, sure. It looked a little creepy, sure. But I've seen a lot of analog horror series. I've talked about a few on this channel. I found that if you go in not expecting much, you can't really be disappointed. And boy, I was not disappointed. See, Dog Nightmares is the first series in a very long time to unsettle me. And while I can't say I was scared, losing sleep, or shaking in my boots anything while watching it, I don't actually think that's the point. And I think it unsettling me is exactly what it was supposed to do. And it is the first series in so long to make me feel uneasy while viewing that after just a few episodes, I knew I had to talk about it. And maybe you'll disagree. Maybe you'll watch this and be like, oh, that's silly or whatever. But I can tell you, I was unnerved while watching it, to the point that while I was watching it, my roommate in the room behind the one I was in, if that makes sense, dropped something, and it was midnight. It was pitch black. I was just in front of my laptop with my earbuds in, and whenever he did that, it scared me so bad, I just let out a slew of profanities. My bad. And again, that's not because the series scared me, but it's because I was on edge so much from it that when something did happen, it scared me so bad, and it was so embarrassing. And I definitely yelled at my roommate, sorry, buddy. All that to say, I knew after watching this, I wanted to talk about it here for all of you. And I will be completely honest, while dead in the middle of research for this video, I saw that Nightmind made a video on it. He's another YouTuber, in case you're not aware, but I'm sure if you're here, you are, who talks about a lot of internet series and whatnot. Makes very, very good content. I've been a fan for a while now. But he made a video on Dog Nightmares. So I withheld on watching his video until I was done getting all my research and writing down all my notes and whatnot for this video. I have seen it at the time of recording. Most of the conclusions I came to in the video were ones he came to as well. So if you've seen his, it'll be a little similar, I won't lie. I made sure not to let the stuff he says in his video impact mine at all. So while they are similar, there are little differences. So while I did not use his video for research or anything, all the conclusions and opinions and stuff I have completely come from me. They were written down before I saw his video. Because they're similar, I did just want to go ahead and mention that and throw that out there. Kind of credit him as a source, even though I didn't use his video as one, if that makes sense. But there will be a link to his video in the description if you want to watch it. It's really good. Like I said, it's kind of similar to this one, but I just wanted to make that known now since it happened right as I was in the middle of research. So great video. Go watch Nightmind. But Nightmind plug over there. Let's talk about Dog Nightmares. So Dog Nightmares is an analog horror series created by YouTuber Piggy Soda. So I've talked about what analog horror is in detail on my last two analog horror videos. So I'll make this very, very quick. But analog horror is basically sort of a horror subgenre branching off from found footage. So while there are elements of found footage in this series, for example, there's actually a good deal of it in this series, to the point that it's almost more of a found footage series than analog horror at times, but it's unique enough to where it almost shouldn't be compartmentalized there. But regardless, analog horror will use things such as VHS tapes, news broadcasts, PSAs, things like that to convey horror through a different type of medium. It's very eerie and nostalgic, and I love it very much. But like I said, Dog Nightmares sort of does its own thing. So without further ado, let's dive into it. The first video in this series is called Dog Show. And as I mentioned earlier, it is hard for me to say Dog Nightmares is as much scary as it is unsettling. Sure, the series certainly has effective scares planted throughout, but where it mostly got me is just how uncomfortable I was watching it. And what do I mean by that? Well, the very first thing we see in Dog Nightmares is someone sitting in a dimly lit room watching a video. As you can see, this video is a simple, harmless skit of a dog's head kind of on a human's body acting as a mechanic. Now, the original video, which we will dive into later as it's actually like a real video outside of the analog horror series, but we'll get to that in a bit, is not meant to be creepy in any way. And in fact, it really isn't, or shouldn't be at least. But I don't know why. Something about this like dog-human thing just unnerves me so bad. Maybe I'm just an idiot. Maybe I've just watched too many analog horrors that for whatever reason that's what does it for me and not, any of the other stuff. But that's the first thing we see in this series, and instantly I was like, oh god, like I hate it. I hate these dogman things, and they're what we see for a lot of the series. I hate it. And this, I believe, can be somewhat credited to the Uncanny Valley. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the Uncanny Valley, but I'll go ahead and provide you with a definition in case you aren't from Wikipedia. The Uncanny Valley effect is a hypothesized psychological and aesthetic relation between an object's degree of resemblance to a human being and the emotional response to an object. Adding to that, Medium.com says about the Uncanny Valley's relation in horror media, our brains are wired to seek patterns and recognize faces, so when something familiar becomes distorted or corrupted, it throws our recognition system off. This is the heart of the Uncanny Valley theory in horror. Things that are almost human, but not quite, trigger a primal fear in us. And I think this is why the imagery we see in Dog Nightmares unnerves me so much. You have the human body with this dog's head on it, and even though there's nothing creepy about the dog, well, yet, we'll get there, and there's nothing creepy about the human body, them being together is just simply wrong. And something about it being wrong triggers that Uncanny Valley effect in your head, or at least mine, and just makes me just hate this thing. Like, I don't mean to imply, like, I lost sleep over this or anything. Like, I watched it and moved on, but, like, so while I cannot say I am effectively scared of this thing, what I can say is that right off the rip, from the very first frame of Dog Nightmares, I was unsettled. The tone had been set for me. Like I said, we see someone watching a video of these humanoid dogs acting as mechanics. But all the while, we see the viewer is holding a Polaroid picture. It's too dark to make out what is on both the image as well as the text written under it. But while looking at it, the footage on the TV cuts out and is replaced with a close-up of a dog's head, looking deep into the camera. Its sunken, dark eyes staring right at the viewer as the audio cuts out. It only lasts a few moments, though, before cutting back to the initial video, with one of the dogs remarking, "Could be trouble," as the video ends. This is a very, very brief introduction to the world of Dog Nightmares, but as I said, I feel like it sets the tone. This isn't a series that'll really try and jump scare you. It will play with atmosphere and sound to try and make you feel uncomfortable and uneasy. The next entry is called Childhood Dreams. This video primarily shows pictures taken during an apparent trip to the zoo, before showing a child's drawing of these pictures. The date at the bottom of the photos is April 30th, 2000. Most of these are pretty normal, just the photos of the animals, followed by their children's drawing counterpart, until we get about a minute in. A photo of a family sitting on a couch. The family's faces are blurred out, but besides that, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong here. Only when it fades out, there's no drawing of this event. Instead, it just cuts back to the animals, and the video continues as it was going before. Again, though, we get a photo that doesn't relate to the zoo visit. This one being a photo from the bottom of a stairwell. The image flickers before cutting back to the zoo animals. The video would only last a bit longer before once again returning to the images from the house. Only this time the child's drawing flickers into view before we get to see the image that it was based off of, a reverse of what we saw from the zoo photos and illustrations. We get a picture of a stairwell from different angles. There's nothing of note during the first one, but the child's drawing of the second one has a dog's head looking down from the stairs. However, when we see the photo that the drawing is based on, there's no such dog to be seen. In this photo, we also get a look at the date that these photos were taken. April 16th, 2000. So these photos were taken before the zoo trip, which took place on the 30th. The next image is that of a little girl. Like all of the humans seen in these photos, her face too is blurred. The footage starts flickering in and out on the image of her, before the music cuts entirely, and the next image is shown, now being one of a bunch of drawings spread out on the floor in front of a window. We get some static before the footage changes completely, no longer the sort of slideshow that we were previously viewing, but now a VHS-style video, filming someone cleaning up all of the drawings on the ground that we saw in the last image. These drawings are the very ones we saw during the video. So likely what happened here is that the video was shot immediately after the child had finished drawing these pictures. Now, someone, presumably a parent or guardian, is cleaning up the mess that was made and is filming it for some reason. While picking them up, the camera operator finds a picture drawn of a dog in a red flannel shirt, waving through a window. There is no noise in this segment, but it can be suspected that the camera operator hears something by the way they jolt up and look at the window. A window strikingly similar to the one depicted on the drawing. And while it is hard to make out, for a brief second, in the darkness, you can make out what appears to be a flannel patterned shirt outside. The camera jerks downwards, and the video ends. The next video is called Bite, and it's only about 30 seconds long. This video starts with about 5 seconds of static, before opening up to show, yet again, another one of those humanoid dog things. Again, it's important to remember that this is a real video, and the real life counterpart is not meant to be creepy, but this one follows a human dog fisherman. That's a sentence. But the footage sort of cuts around between the dog fishing out of the boat and the dog looking through a tackle box trying to find the perfect bait. That is until the footage distorts and cuts to a missing dog poster being hung up. The date on the video here is March 11th, 2009. We can't see any of the information besides that, and the video ends there. Following Bite is the video 1/04/2009, obviously being the date January 4th, 2009. We are met with text upon clicking on this video that says weird dog, and then again, the date. Found this while looking through my collection of Wegman tapes I've gathered. Check it out. Now here is where I want to talk about the footage that we've been seeing of those weird dog human hybrids, and what this actually is. Like I said earlier, these are actual films like here in the real world, not just in the world of dog nightmares, and they are made by a photographer and filmmaker named William Wegman. Now I'm sure some of you have recognized the footage being used by Wegman or are familiar with his work as a whole, but for those like myself who were not until this instance during the series, I'll explain it a little bit. See, Wegman was an artist who, to put it simply, really liked his dogs, which is a good trait to have. So much so that he would use his dogs in his works. This would be like photography, or as we see here in videos, he really liked having the dogs kind of atop like human bodies, as though the dogs were the people. And while that doesn't sound bad, and it really isn't, it just freaks me out. I can't help it. That's not to dog on William Wegman or any of his works. It is clear he is a very talented and passionate and creative individual, and I am glad he found work that he enjoys doing, especially with his lovely dogs, but I can't help it. It makes me uneasy. I don't really know why this was the type of art he tried to do. More power to him. Art's creative and subjective, so if this is what he enjoyed doing, then absolutely fantastic for him. I'm glad he found something he liked. But I've not seen in any interviews or anything anyone asking like, why the dogs on the human bodies. I'm sure there's an answer out there somewhere, and most people probably aren't as bothered by it as I am. But I think he really just enjoyed using his dogs with these kind of human bodies to further like progress the narrative of the plot in his works, and good for him. And it would seem that the protagonist of Dog Nightmares is a fan of these Wegman films. Anyways, back to the video at hand. Our protagonist was watching one of these Wegman films when they noticed a dog behaving strangely in it. The Wegman film follows a dog at a restaurant, but as it goes, the footage distorts, and as it does, you can see through the static that the dog playing the waiter stares right into the camera, its eyes dark, as the other dogs in the scene seem to be distorted slightly as well, their features unable to be properly seen. The video returns to normal briefly before ending. And in this video, there's actually a little bit of detail in the description. It reads, Sorry that some of the audio is cut off. My camera isn't working so well. I haven't been feeling all that great lately with some personal stuff going on behind the scenes, but I will be getting back to uploading soon. Thank you all, E. So our protagonist is someone going by the name E, and something is going wrong in their personal life. Perhaps something going wrong, like their dog going missing, and them having to go around hanging up posters, like we saw a few videos ago. The next video is easily the longest in the series. It's almost 15 minutes long. For context, the next longest until this point was 3 minutes, so we have upped the ante a good deal. This one is called My New Best Friend. Again, the first thing we are greeted to is Wegman films, starting with the fisherman that we saw earlier, as it, yet again, flips between the dog fishing and looking through various types of bait. However, this footage would be interrupted by handheld footage, again being shot in March of 2009, now being the 24th. Whoever is filming this is seen hanging up missing dog posters yet again, only this time we can see that the dog's name is Bailey. The footage changes again, this time to a series of handwritten notes. The first note reads, January 29th, 2009. Someone called again. They haven't found him yet, but someone keeps calling me, and every time I pick up the phone, there's silence on the other end. I keep trying to block out the number, but they just keep calling. I don't recognize the number either. It won't stop me from looking, though. I still have hope that he got picked up by a shelter, or someone found him without a collar and took him in. I can only hope he's safe and sound. I'll find you, buddy. And at the bottom there's a picture of a dog, who we can presume to be Bailey. The next reads, February 13th, 2009. I managed to gather a bunch of Wegman tapes. I plan to archive as many as I can find and burn it into one disc. So far, I've managed to get my hands on Mother Goose, but I'm still in search of 2 shorts. One is of Batty making pottery, and the other is of Batty and Crookie playing baseball. I hope someone has a copy or recorded it. At the bottom, there's an illustration of one of the human dog things, named Batty, and it says, What I Remember from the Clay Video. February 25th, 2009. Got a note from a friend today. He said he got me something for my late birthday. I haven't spoken to him in a while since I've been busy looking for Bailey. He wanted me to record myself reacting to his gift. I'm a little tired at the moment. I'll take a look at it tomorrow. Then we get to see an opening of the gift unboxing. The box says Emily's stuff, allowing us to determine that the E that we have been following as our protagonist is named Emily. Through text, Emily is able to tell us that the audio on her camera is broken, but that she should be getting a new one soon. The first thing in the box is a get well soon card, with a dog like that of the Wegman dogs on the cover. There is text right on the inside, but with how blurry the footage is, it's impossible to make out. Next, Emily opens a little box and is ecstatic to see that, within it, is a copy of her favorite movie, The Hartley Boys, Hartley Gold. Of course, this is a William Wegman film. She takes the VHS out and begins looking at it, before text comes up saying oops, before the footage temporarily cuts out. She thanks her friend for the gift before remembering that she has something to show them. It is a photo album that she has finished. The photos in it should be familiar, as they are the picture of the zoo and the house that we saw all the way back in childhood dreams. If it's not obvious already, this pretty well confirms that Emily is the child that was drawing these pictures way back in childhood dreams. The series has been effectively switching between childhood Emily in the year 2000 and adult Emily in the year 2009. We get to one photo where there is a hand-drawn picture of a dog, to which Emily points to it and says, "That's me." So Emily has basically censored herself in these images by drawing herself as a dog. We go on to see that she did this with every person seen in the photo album, disguising their identity with hand-drawn animal heads. This doesn't seem to be nefarious or anything. I don't think she's concealing their identity to keep it secret from anyone. I think it's just a fun, creative thing that she's done. She gets to an image of the stairs before pointing to something we can't see between the banisters. And while this isn't the same image that the picture was based on in childhood dreams, it is a similar spot to where the dog head was drawn that wasn't apparent in the actual image itself in that entry. Without the audio working though, it's impossible to know what Emily is saying as she points to that spot. Again, there's another childhood photo of Emily with her face covered by a dog drawing. But as the camera pans over to the next photo on the right, we briefly see what looks like a person sitting down next to a dog before the camera succumbs to static. Text comes up after a moment that informs us that this was a result of her camera dying, just before Emily thanks her friend for the gifts. Only after that, we briefly hear the sound of a dog barking. This continues as the image that the camera died before we could get a good look at comes into picture. It is most definitely a woman sitting next to her dog, only something is wrong. The dog's head is twisted abnormally. Regardless of the awful state of the dog, it is clear that this is a photo of Bailey, Emily's missing dog. After the image fades out, more of the notes appear on the screen. March 2nd, 2009. I keep having that dream again. The one where you are no longer with me. I know you are still out there. I keep going around asking my neighbors to keep an eye out for you. I'm sorry I couldn't come home and you must have gone to look for me. Then there's a drawing of a dog, presumably Bailey, sleeping on the couch next to a person. March 5th, 2009. I'll find you. No matter how little sleep I get each day, you mean more to me. I can't live without you, Bailey. I love you. March 8th, 2009. Someone keeps taking the posters down. I had to keep putting them up. And sure enough, the images show one of the missing posters ripped up on the ground. March 19th, 2009. I found some old photos while looking for photos of Bailey. They were from my old home. I also found some old paintings of me. There was also a book I made when I was about 7 or 8. Would you like to take a look? We can look at them together. This next note unfolds slowly, far more wrinkled than any of the others when it does. We can see a picture of a dog, its head twisted completely upside down. The text reading, "You won't be alone." We see another photo from within Emily's childhood home. Only this is one we haven't seen yet. It's a hand, pointing to something off screen. And the next image shows us exactly what they were pointing at. Someone is in the house. We can't make out any of their features as they are obscured by darkness, but before we have too much time to take that in, there's a picture of Emily standing by the stairs. Then we flash to another drawing, again one we haven't seen before. Judging from what we know about how Emily draws herself in the scrapbook, we can justly assume that this picture is of Emily, holding hands with someone we can't make out completely. From what we can see though, they are taller than her, wearing a red shirt, and it appears as though they have a tail. Next to Emily, she wrote, "Best friend." There's another note that says, "Mommy had to go too," though we cannot see the rest of this one. Then we see a series of drawings done by young Emily, with a voiceover to accompany them. This is the book that she wrote when she was about 7 or 8.
Mommy has left to go to work. And I love to play all by myself. She warned me not to open the door to strangers. And she always has a key to open the door. She says if I ever hear knocking on the front door, I must go up to my room really fast and lock the until she comes home. But I don't like going upstairs. There's a really big hole in the wall that's really scary. Sometimes I can hear it creaking from in there. One day, I ran really fast past it. When I did, I heard a doggy barking. And then silence. I took my flashlight and went to take a look. And then I met my new best friend. The end.
And in this image, we can see that it was, in fact, the dog man monster thing who has become friends with Emily, but also that there is red around the eyes. Likely blood. The footage again returns back to the Wegman films. Only it seems as though Emily is watching at this time, all the while holding a Polaroid in her hand like she did in the first video. At first we can only make out the words, "he's still," the rest being obscured by her hands. The Wegman footage jumps around from scene to scene rapidly, but it begins to deliver a message saying either the dog is still out there, or he is still out there.
Maybe only the dog is still out there. Anything? Oh, the dog is still out there.
That is until the screen begins flickering on the dog setting the bait. From the slight distortion, its eyes appear black. And it was only during this video that I realized that under its fishing vest, it is wearing a red flannel. It begins reaching for its face, burying its face in its hands before the scene cuts back to Emily, who is watching this unfold. And we see that the rest of the text on the Polaroid says, "out there." The entire thing coming together to say, he is still out there. As the Polaroid becomes more and more clear, we can see that it is a picture of two people, a man and a woman. And the video comes to an end. The description on this one simply reads, "he will be found," likely in reference to Bailey. The next video in the series is called Bailey, and honestly, nothing important happens in this one that I can tell. It has a woman painting, a painting of a dog sleeping on a couch. It resembles the sketch we saw earlier of the dog that looks like Bailey sleeping on the couch next to its owner, and it would seem as though Emily sketched that out and then decided to turn it into a painting. That's literally all that happens in this episode, but it's a nice painting at least, so that's good, and we get a break from the scares, so that's great as well. The whole time I was expecting there to be like some jump scare or something that comes out. Nope, it's just a painting video. It's kind of nice, kind of a relaxing little break from the series when you're binging it. But now we can move on to the next entry. The next entry is called "What Are You Afraid Of?" We see who we can assume to be Emily walking through the snow when she comes upon the Polaroid that we saw in the last video having been wedged into a tree. When the scene changes, we are met with more notes. This one is titled October 9th, 2008. It's snowing. Bailey likes the snow. I remember going outside and playing in the snow with him. It's been a long day. My mom says it's time I move on, but I can't. I don't want to give up on my best friend. Now the date here is back in early October of 2008. The majority of this series, at least when pertaining to Emily searching for Bailey, has taken place in February and March of 2009. This means that Bailey has been missing for at least 5 months, and that's at the absolute earliest, because it's likely that it's been even longer since Emily's mom says it's time to give up. So there's a chance Bailey's been missing for north of 6, 7, 8 months potentially, and that Emily just won't give up on her best friend. On that subject though, Emily refers to Bailey as her best friend. Previously as a child, Emily referred to the dog monster as her best friend. I'll talk about this a bit later, but it's very possible that there could be a connection there. After that, we see a Christmas tree with a photo of young Emily on it, but something can be heard moving behind her which causes her to spin around. There are 2 things that we can take in here. One is that the painting of Bailey from the last episode is hanging above the couch. 2 is that there is a red flannel pattern on the couch, a pattern very similar to the one that the dog monster wears. A series of barks can be heard from the hallway, but Emily is hesitant to leave the room and investigate. Something seems to startle her as she takes off running before the footage ends, and a note comes up that says, "That is not my Bailey." Then a photo of Bailey, his head twisted completely upside down, is made apparent to us. The final thing in this video is another note, this one with a drawing of Bailey that says, "My Bailey is afraid of the dark." And that seems to be the end of Dog Nightmares Chapter 1. Luckily, at the time of recording, Piggy Soda has posted a teaser for Dog Nightmares Chapter 2. Now this teaser does have new footage, but mostly kind of just acts as a recap or a reintroduction to what we've already seen, but there is new footage, and with that new footage, we get a better look at the dog monster.
He's very tall, and he likes to hide in dark places. He could be shy sometimes, but I don't mind. Oh, I think that's him. I have to go now. But before I do, let me introduce him. I'm sure he would love to meet you.
We do get a scene that can stand alone on its own, though, at the very end. It seems as though this could take place at the end of the live action segment that we saw in the last episode. Emily is staring into a dark hallway and calls out for Bailey. An illustration appears, I think as a way to show us where Bailey is in the dark since it doesn't show up on camera. However, we do not see how this is resolved, but if I'm right about when this takes place, and we know from Emily's reaction of running away and informing us that that was not her Bailey, I would assume something bad or at the very least eerie is to happen here. The last thing we get is a clip from one of the Wegman films, with the dog saying good job to the camera, and for the time being, that wraps up Dog Nightmares. So, what do I think is happening in the series so far? Well, it seems as though the story of Dog Nightmares so far is as follows. As a kid, a young girl named Emily was afraid of a hole above her stairs in her home. One day, she gathers the courage to look into the hole with a flashlight and sees this bizarre dog-a-human thing. But the two end up becoming best friends, though I suspect as Emily gets older, she believes this to be an imaginary friend. This is never explicitly stated, but I feel like you'd have a really bizarre view on the world if you actually believed that, like, the dog-human thing was I don't think Emily would be as well adjusted if she thought that thing was real, but we don't know. Maybe she does. My guess personally is that she believes it to have been an imaginary friend as she grew up. Though it's horror, we know that's probably not true. As an adult, Emily has a dog named Bailey, which Emily would now consider to be her best friend. Sometime before October 8th, 2008, however, Bailey has sadly gone missing. Emily is obsessed with trying to find her beloved dog, but it seems as though the dog monster thing from her past, her former best friend, is responsible for Bailey's disappearance. Trying to clear any opposition to reuniting with Emily. Perhaps this is done out of jealousy or something more nefarious, but I'm willing to bet as the series unfolds, we'll find out that this thing is responsible for Bailey's disappearance and potential death in order to get closer to Emily again. All the while, there's the mystery of who's still out there and whether or not that is a good thing or not. This series obviously gives us several questions that we can consider going into Chapter 2. The first of which is who is still out there. Obviously, we know Emily is searching for Bailey, but considering the Polaroid doesn't have a picture of Bailey, it has a picture of a man and a woman. Who is still out there that needs finding besides Bailey? Could this be a family member, a friend, a partner, or is it something more nefarious? Basically, what I'm asking here is, he is still out there. Is that reassuring? Someone is still out there, I will find them and everything will be okay. Or is it a warning for Emily to stay on her toes? He is still out there. Be careful. Time will tell, as we know next to nothing about that at the moment. Next is, what is the dog monster and where did it come from? Well, most definitely the antagonist of the series. We don't really know anything about this monster, other than that it's Emily's friend as a kid and seems to have returned in her adult life. And it came from a hole in the wall. Now, could this hole be something like a portal to another world, perhaps where this thing is from? I feel like if it was just a loft where something could sit, even if Emily couldn't see it without the use of a flashlight, she wouldn't have called it a hole. Once again, we know very little here, but it seems as though the dog monster has an obsession or attachment to Emily, and most definitely came from this hole in the wall. Be that another world, or realm, or whatever have you. It literally could just be a hole in the wall that this dog thing settled up in as well. There could be nothing special about the hole in the wall. The dog monster is more the concern. And speaking of the dog monster, I think we need to talk about its appearance. Obviously, it resembles one of the Wegman dogs. It just seems far too convenient that it happens to look like a thing that's actually present in our own world with like the Wegman films. So did the dog monster take the form of one of the Wegman dogs to better gain Emily's trust, to try and make her feel comfortable and unalarming because she loves the Wegman films? Or does Emily love the Wegman films because of her memory of her best friend who happened to look like one of those when she was a child? Personally, I think it's option one. I think it is far more nefarious and unnerving if this thing looked at this child, somehow knew what she enjoyed, perhaps from watching her, after all it did live in her house, knew that she loved these Wegman films, and decided to basically make itself look like one in order for her to be more comfortable around it, so it could get closer to her in a form that she would trust or at least feel safe around. That is far more scary to me than anything else, that this thing is taking advantage of what this child, and as we know as an adult, she still enjoys these movies, enjoys in order to get closer to her. That is uncomfortable, to put it lightly. Sure, there is the possibility that Emily likes the Wegman films because they remind her of her childhood imaginary best friend, but that just seems less narratively powerful. So while possible, I'm definitely going with option one here. Next is the main question of the series, at least the parts taking place with adult Emily. What happened to Bailey, and where is he? It's likely that the dog monster killed Bailey, or at the very least is responsible for what happened to him. As a kid, Emily referred to the dog monster as her best friend. Now, however, as an adult, she refers to Bailey as her best friend. Perhaps this thing got jealous of being replaced and took out Emily's new best friend Bailey in order to take its spot back as her old best friend. But in What Are You Afraid Of?, the phrasing of "that is not my Bailey" after the barking was heard, as well as the image of Bailey with its head twisted completely around, could imply that something was done to Bailey. Maybe Bailey came back, but different, twisted in some sick way. This Bailey was seemingly in the dark of the house. We can infer this from Emily saying that her Bailey is afraid of the dark. And we know from the dog monster living in the hole in the stairs and the chapter 2 teaser saying that the dog monster likes to hide in dark places, it isn't impossible to suggest that maybe, in order to get closer to Emily, the dog monster sort of turned into Bailey, sort of like a skinwalker or some sort of demented shapeshifter, or something along those lines, having gotten rid of the original Bailey and replacing it with its sick, demented interpretation. Or it's possible that it is the real Bailey and something was done to it. Again, it looks like Chapter 2 is going to seek to answer those questions. And one that is just barely touched on at all is who is the supposed intruder in the home when Emily was a child. In one of the photos, we see a figure being pointed to in the home. We don't know who this is, but the way they are framed in the series is off-putting. They seem to be a threat, but ultimately we know next to nothing about them. It is possible that if the "he is still out there" prompt is a stark reminder that Emily is potentially in danger, that this is the person she is in danger from. Also, how long has this been an issue for Emily? We see in the book that she wrote and drew that her mother told her that if anyone so much as knocks on the door while she is home alone, that she is to run to her room and lock the door. Not answering the door is one thing. Stranger danger and all that makes sense. But actively hiding and locking yourself in your room in response to a knock on the door is another. Is this person someone that has been after Emily for a long time? Or is something else going on here? Of course, this could also be the dog monster, though the way this figure is blurred and the way Emily seems to be afraid of the potential of someone coming to her home while she's home alone frames this as being something different. I don't believe the intruder is the same as the dog monster, and if it is, Emily certainly isn't aware of that. I think this is another potentially secondary antagonist for the series. Now, truth be told, I think the "he is still out there" message is more of a positive one. I think it is reassuring that someone Emily cares about is still out there and needs to be found. But, like I've said a couple times now, we know next to nothing about that. And I'm so excited for Chapter 2 to answer some of these questions, and I'm sure Chapter 2 will also open up more questions for us to talk about here at some point in the future. That is Dog Nightmares. Like I said, this is the first series in a while to actually unsettle me and make me feel uneasy. Maybe you disagree. Horror's subjective. That's totally fine if you disagree. But the work that Piggy Soda put into this series cannot be understated. I was a fan almost instantly, just from the atmosphere and the way I felt watching this, being uneasy and uncomfortable, was just such a welcome feeling, as strange as that sounds, to have while watching a horror series. And I just want to thank Piggy Soda for all the hard work they have put into this. I am so excited to see where the series goes. But that will pretty much do it for today's video. I want to thank you all so very much for watching. I know as far as analog horror series goes, this one was a little bit shorter of a video, but it's one I wanted to cover pretty bad after watching the first episode. Again, Nightmind has a video on it. We come to similar conclusions, but I think he goes into more detail. So link to that in the description. Check it out. It's a great video. I promise I didn't let it interfere with my own interpretation, even if it is similar. My bad. I'm sorry. Check it out in the description. Very great video if you want more Dog Nightmares content. Obviously, go watch the actual Dog Nightmares series. It's incredible. It's in the description as well. And yeah, just thanks again very much for watching, guys. I appreciate it way more than I can describe. And I will see you all in the next video, so I hope you have a great day. Thanks.